Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with executive coach and communications expert Jen Kilbourne. She built her first online education company in a B2B niche and sold it in 2020. Since then, she's been focusing behind the scenes with spiritually minded entrepreneurs to develop their books, courses, and transformational content. Her mission is to provide the services and education needed for the visionary leaders to sustainably support and profit from their work online, so that their audiences of real people can benefit as greatly as possible. It's quite a story. Enjoy.
Okay, Jen, great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out for the program today. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Joe.
Yeah, my pleasure. Where are you located?
I am in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, good. I need to get to the Carolinas. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I'd love to begin our conversation with the fact that we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of this pandemic, and I'm curious if we go back to 2020, how did you survive it? How did it change you?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, what a great question. And absolutely, I'm on the same track of thought as you. It's like, how has the last 4 years just sort of flown by, but also a little bit of a blur? 4 years ago, if I were to take you back 4 years ago, there was a lot that was different about my life. I've had a lot of really positive changes, some that were sad or not necessarily things that I would have chosen, but it has really taught me a lot about accepting and going with the flow and really, really honing in. And this is for me personally, business-wise, but also for my children. It's setting myself up for, okay, what is the absolute best environment that I need to be in, that my children need to be in order for us to be supported and to grow. Now knowing that, hey, this is a glimpse of quote unquote some of those worst possibilities. Like, now that we know what some of those worst possibilities are, like, how can we actually make sure that we are set up to support each other and support ourselves? Because what I've seen happen to a lot of people is that the ground sort of fell out from under them because they weren't in the right relationships, in the right jobs, in the right environment, in the right companies. And so that is the bottom line for me, has been, really getting serious and being honest with ourselves about what we need to be our best.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. On paper, it's one thing, but it's a different thing. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids curiously asks you, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that child?
Okay, I love that. So I have a son who's 13 now, but from the time he was about 5 years old, he was so excited to tell everybody that his mom is a YouTuber. Because that's cool. That's cool when you're a kid. So, and to explain it to some third graders, I would probably say I have used YouTube and I have used other things like podcasting and other forms of video to reach people who don't live near me. The same way that I would if they did live near me, I'd be able to, come to their class or come to their school and do a presentation and teach them. But I use the internet in order to reach people who need to know the specific topics and things that I teach that are not available anywhere near them. So basically, I'm a teacher, I'm a consultant, I am a podcast host. I have grown and sold my own teaching platform, exited in 2020, and now have been working again one-on-one with other people like me who wanted to grow their own teaching platform online.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
That's also a really good question. So one of the earliest jobs I can remember wanting to have was to be like a fiction author. And that appealed to me because in my mind at the time, and I can really still visualize this actually, Joe, I remember thinking that if I was an author, like a professional author, that I could be at home and look out my window, at the ocean or wherever cool place that I would live, and just get to write all day. And, it's really funny because I've never really considered myself primarily a writer, but I think that the idea of having the lifestyle of choosing my own career on my own terms and for it to be creative and for people to really enjoy it, in a widespread way, I think that vision is very much something that I have created for myself. So great question.
So let me ask you this. What was the first book or one of the seminal books when you were growing up that you read that really made an effect on you?
Oh, okay, good. The first thing that came up to me that when you asked that question is the Chronicles of Narnia, because it just seemed so magical and it was such like an in-depth world. And so I remember reading that book, not just, I believe there was like the first book was probably assigned as a reading assignment in elementary school, but I read the whole series and I just thought, wow, I can't believe that someone, C.S. Lewis brought that out of his imagination and that it was so just impactful.
So what was the first thing that you wrote where you thought, wow, this is a talent, this is something that I'm good at, this is what I want to pursue?
Well, I'm going to bring this back to my career now because what I do now is not so much fiction writing, although I will say a lot of the way that I teach and my thought process, I have been coaching and teaching other business owners we're going on at least 8 years now that I've been doing it online. And my specific targets have always been pretty practical, like practically minded, but I have always had a very unique approach for teaching other people how I do what I do. Like, what do you say to sell a client into your business? And really, one of the things that has always been a part of the way I teach is not to use a script, like to use things that are really true to you and to really emphasize and build real connections with other people. So even though that doesn't really come back to something that I've written fiction-wise, in fact, I've never written any fiction, Joe. That was really always just a dream that I had when I was little. But I do write a lot of business material and business training material, but I always really try to connect back to what is it that's special about me? How do I help other people along in their journeys? And how do I help people learn what to say, right thing, right time, right person, so that they can build their business one relationship at a time?
So take me back to where you were born and raised and how these seeds got into you. You're obviously very highly motivated. You want to help others.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Okay. Great question. I was actually born and raised right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. So I just recently moved back into my home area a couple of years ago. I am the child of two very, very unique people. Amazing. My father is he is a professional musician, but he comes from a long line of missionaries in his family, and his version of his mission and how he translated wanting to put that out into the world is he became sort of like a hippie, like Jimmy Buffett of Christian music. So he was really sharing and teaching, his love for Jesus and that kind of thing in a very different way. He was like the guy with the guitar and singing at church camps. And my father is going to turn 80 this year, and he is still out there making music and being on tour as much as possible, given that the pandemic really did change his ability to lead live events. And then my mother is also very, she has always been involved in the church too, but in her own sort of unique way. She really has a passion for all types of other religious perspectives and spiritual teachings and that type of thing. And so I was never interested in becoming a spiritual teacher or leader myself. But the really interesting thing is that over the past couple of years, I started to work with more clients that were looking to bring their work online, like building YouTube channels and publishing books. And I have started to work with people who are in the spirituality genre or spirituality space. And they have some really unique challenges when it comes to building a platform online and helping other people, because it's hard to learn how to monetize and support an online platform when what your main message is really very mission driven and very heart led. And so because of my background with, my parents and the way that I was raised, I got to travel a lot. I got to see a lot of different things and have some different opportunities that frankly a lot of people didn't. I do have a very unique skill set because I know all of the technology and I understand the behind the scenes about building an online business, but I also am able to help these people who do have a spiritual or more visionary mission bring all of that together so that they can really impact as many people as possible.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
That's a tough question. So one of the things that I personally have grown to understand over time is the wisdom of really, really, really knowing yourself and leaning into your uniqueness and even quirkiness and even weirdness at times, because when you are being that true to yourself and that vulnerable, what I have seen is that that is part of having a powerful presence that impacts people, whether it's, you just making friends and going through life, or whether you're trying to be the face of a company and, build relationships and build a brand and a reputation. I have learned through trial and error that if you are building your life and your business or your brand or your leadership around something that is not quite really you, and it's something that you think, you're playing a role and that you can just get by with looking like everybody else and blending in. Basically, I think that the big advice is that blending in is not necessarily the way. Like, really standing out is like, okay, well, God gave us these unique personality traits for a reason, and I think that is part of what everybody's secret sauce really is.
So if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational, who would that be? Who would you love to meet and talk to? Simon
Sinek.
What would you ask?
That's a great question. I find there is something about his energy, his message, his mission that really resonates, and he's doing so much good in the world. What would I ask him? Well, first of all, I believe, I've been watching his business journey and his authorship of several books and his TED Talks, and there is something in him that I know that he started out in a very introverted, kind of sensitive, just as a person. I think as he was developing in his career, he wasn't necessarily the guy that thought that he was going to go make a name for himself and go be the face of optimism and positivity and creating change. And what I would ask him if I got to meet him would be something along the lines of, if he's willing to tell me, of course, like, what was really happening internally for you that made you realize, like, maybe you don't necessarily want to go out there and be the face and be the big name, but he must have known he had to do it. I think he really heard a call or was driven by some sense of purpose that he could not ignore. And if I got to meet him, I would just love to just like listen to him tell what that was really like. Because I know that there are a lot of people out there who are going through or have sensed some of that same tension of, being introverted, but knowing that you're the person that needs to be out there saying something. And so I know that that's a struggle for a lot of people. I would love to hear Simon's the real story of that.
So every day you wake up, you have a motivation to not only professionally accomplish your goals to help people, but to also evolve as a human. What's that motivation for you every day to do that?
Joe, I recently turned 40, and I think I sort of had a little bit of an awakening moment where I thought, kind of similar to what I was just saying about Simon. I mean, there's a part of me that I've been the face of a business. I sold the company. There was a part of me that would have rather done anything else other than try to, have to be out there, being out there even when you don't feel like it. I mean, I just really, I guess, recognize that what drives me is knowing. I mean, I have very, very clear evidence and knowing that I have a very, very unique skill set in this world, and that there are at least one whole group of people, going back to what I was talking about the more spiritually minded, authors and entrepreneurs that do not necessarily have a business coach giving them really solid advice for their industry. When I recognize that I have this unique skill set and that if I don't do it, that there might be nobody else who's willing to do it. Because it's sort of as a group that some people don't, in the online marketing world, don't necessarily want to touch because they don't know how to help them. And so when I recognize that if I don't get out of my head and get out of myself and get out of my comfort zone, that I would be actually directly responsible for holding back their mission and then all of the people that they're meant to help. And so when I saw how the domino effect was coming from me and my motivations, I mean, that really lit a fire under me to like really, really get it together and push into not overdrive, but just push as hard as I need to make sure that I'm reaching the people that need me.
So, Jen, if you had a dream tonight, ran into, like, say, the 20-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life, things you've overcome and achieved, the wisdom you've gotten, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
I know this may sound unconventional, but I think I actually really would tell myself that I needed to accept the fact that it's impossible for me to make a mistake. And what I mean by that is that I know that even when I was 20 years old, half my lifetime ago, that I have always had a knack for, not necessarily having all the right cards at the right time, but playing the right card in the right way as best as possible. And if I could just go back and tell myself, you're doing it right. You're going to go through some long tangents and some things that aren't necessarily what you planned or what you saw, but it's all going to benefit you. And if you can just not beat yourself up over what you think is making a wrong move, just recognize that all of it is on purpose and all of it has a purpose.
So of all of the things that you've done and become and evolved into in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Well, the single biggest thing that I've ever done for myself that has brought me consistent confidence, sense of purpose, financial freedom, assets in terms of relationships, assets in terms of skills that are highly valuable to other people, is when and it was about 2016, early 2016, decided that I was going to create an online course and teach other professional organizers. At the time I had a business of my own, helping other people organize their houses. And I knew that I had a very unique way of doing what I was doing as far as how I was structuring the business. And I knew that it was working well for me. And I knew that there was nobody else out there teaching it the way that I was. And so even though I had no idea what I was, it's one of those projects where you think, oh, I'll just do this. And if it helps one person, great. Well, deciding to embark on that journey has led to more positive outcomes than anything else I have ever done in my life. Completely shifted how I saw myself and what I learned about myself as far as my teaching style and how I resonate with people, and my ability to help other people also overcome some of those money mindsets or just identity shifts that they need to be the best person of themselves, best person that they can be. So I would say for sure that I'm proud that I took that leap, not necessarily seeing even 10 steps ahead, but just knowing that I would be able to figure it out as I went, because that absolutely turned out to be true.
So at the end of the day, Jen, you have all of these people in different circles that know you, family, friends, clients, viewers, fans, that you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, it's continuous improvement for sure, but I would say that I thrive best and I'm really, really at my best when I am among people who trust me because they know that I'm willing to say a few things that could make people uncomfortable at times, but they know that it comes from a very, very solid place, not just in terms of my expertise, but because of my heart. And that even when I have a casual conversation with somebody, whether I'm sitting across the bar talking to a friend and they're thinking about starting a business and I'm just sharing my perspective, whether it's that or whether it's literally me doing trainings and teaching online for hundreds of people, I try to be the same person in both of those scenarios. And that has allowed me to relax enough into being a leader online that I have been able to create that sort of vibe of relatability and being real with people. And I feel like that is the thing that connects two people, even when you're just looking across the screen and you're not in real life. So I think that when I look at myself and recognize, hey, building that trust and having people who really do listen and respond to the way that I say things, that's really my sweet spot. So I enjoy it. And, in fact, my company now, I'm building up an agency. The name of the agency is Every Dear Communications, and Every Dear literally refers to, the idea that if you're building up a community online or an email list, that every person on that list is like, Dear Joe, Dear Jen, like every single one of them are people. They're real people with like a real heart and soul. And so when you talk to them like they are your friends, then they are definitely more than just numbers on your email list. And it really benefits them too, because they're going to see you as somebody who genuinely cares about them, and they're going to feel it, and they're going to know that they're in the right place for how you can help them.
Wonderful answer. Jen, if anyone wants to hire you, learn more about you, reach out, all of the good business, where do they go?
Love it. Thank you so much, Joe. It's everydear.com. As I mentioned, it's the word every and then dear, D-E-A-R. So everydear.com is going to lead you to pretty much everything that I do. If you want to know more about my story of building and selling an online company prior to starting this agency, I also have some new programs and new courses that are coming out right now to help other people who are trying to do some of these same things without losing their heart in the process of getting online and diving into the world of internet marketing. I try to simplify it all and make it much, much, much more doable and relatable and possible. So I would love for you guys to come visit me there. And Joe, I really, really appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Jen. You're wonderful. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.